Before this video begins, I would like to issue a small spoiler warning. This video will contain spoilers for Death Note, more specifically the first half, as this video will discuss L and his behaviors, some of which are imperative to the plot as a whole. So, there you go. I'd also like to add an additional preface to this video, as this video does discuss the condition of autism. I am not a licensed medical professional in any way, shape, or form. This is merely a deconstruction of the DSM-5 as it is written and my observations of L's character as a whole. This is not to be used for medical advice or an official diagnosis. This is merely speculation based on information that is current, up-to-date, and well-known. Thank you, and enjoy the video. Autism spectrum disorder, or more simply known as autism, has a lot of stigma and stereotypes surrounding it. Its primary characteristic tends to be delayed or improper social development. As a result, those on the autism spectrum are more likely to be bullied. Of course, that's not the topic of this video. Hello everyone, this is Dylan, otherwise known as Lord of the Weebs. Welcome back to another video. Today I will be discussing a paper that I have written on why I think L from Death Note has autism spectrum disorder. For this video and for this paper that I had written a few months ago, I will be referencing the DSM-5's criteria for autism as shown on the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's website. I assume you already know who L is and what Death Note is, so I'm not going to bore you with any synopsis. You should know by now. If you don't, then go watch it. It's an amazing manga and anime to read and watch. I would highly recommend it. So, without any further ado, let's jump on into it. The diagnostic criteria for autism spectrum disorder falls into 5 different categories labeled A, B, C, D, and E. For A and B, there are 3 and 4 subsections respectively. There is also a severity table, which has 3 different levels. Level 1 requiring the least amount of intervention and support, and level 3 requiring the most. We will be going over sections A, B, C, D, and E. However, due to the limited scope of L's life, we will not be able to determine exactly what severity of autism L would have. Criteria A for diagnosing autism, according to the DSM-5, reads as follows. Persistent deficits in social communication and social interaction across multiple contexts, as manifested by the following, currently or by history. Examples are illustrative, not exhaustive. 1. Deficits in social-emotional reciprocity, ranging, for example, from abnormal social approach and failure of normal back-and-forth conversation, to reduce sharing of interests, emotions, or affect, to failure to initiate or respond to social interactions. Number 2, deficits in nonverbal communicative behaviors used for social interaction, ranging, for example, from poorly integrated verbal and nonverbal communication to abnormalities in eye contact and body language, or deficits in understanding and use of gestures, to a total lack of facial expressions and nonverbal communication. And number 3, deficits in developing, maintaining, and understanding relationships, ranging, for example, from difficulties adjusting behavior to suit various social contexts, to difficulties in sharing imaginative play or in making friends, to the absence of interest in peers. In Chapter 11 of the manga, titled 1, L has his first face-to-face interaction of the series when he meets with Soichiro Yagami and the other members of the Japanese task force. After introducing themselves, L does his iconic little finger gun bang thing, and while he justifies this later in the context of the Kira case, showing the names, being obviously death sentences, it still confuses and annoys the NPA officers. Along with this, throughout the manga, L rarely shows any emotion in his face, and is never seen with a genuine sweat drop. A sweat drop in anime is usually used to display a certain amount of concern or distress, and the artist, Takeshi Obata, has said he intentionally never drew L with a sweat drop as he's not one to show that kind of emotion. L only shows emotion once, in shock to the possibility of Shinigami existing, if you all know that crazy thing where he falls out of his chair. Even here, it's likely that L was feigning this adverse reaction to throw the others in the room off about his true thoughts, as he's known to do from time to time. In either case, this shows that L has little to no sharing of emotion. He also doesn't tend to initiate social contact unless he's required, and he does prefer to remain alone for the most part. He definitely qualifies for criteria A1. L is also shown to always sit in a very specific way, in a fetal-like position with his legs tucked under his torso and his hands usually either hanging to his sides or on his knees. He never sits in any other way, saying his deductive skills would go down by 40% if he did this. In Chapter 18, Gaze, during college entrance exams at Toho University, he is scolded by the test administrator for sitting so awkwardly. In Chapter 21, Duplicity, when L meets with Light in Light's favorite coffee shop, Light specifically chose a seat isolated from everyone else. So not only would they have the privacy to discuss the Kira case, but also so nobody would make a fuss about L sitting the way he does. To coincide with the previous statement of L not showing emotion, he also lacks facial expressions beyond his deadpan stare, with the only exception being the one time he shows shock. He doesn't use gestures very much, and only communicates through verbal language and directly through writing and typing. These deficits show that L also fits the profile for criteria A2. Criteria A3 is the easiest of these criteria to give to L, as he states directly in Chapter 31, Easy, that Light is his first friend. Volume 13 of Death Note How to Read, is a canonical 13th volume of the manga in where lies a lot of the supplemental material that you'll find used to support different arguments for different characters, such as profiles for Light and L and the other characters. They also have interviews with Oba and Obata, the creators of the series. Oba and Obata confirm that L was lying to Light, trying to lull him into a false sense of security, or to throw him off. L doesn't have any friends and isn't too interested in them either. He also refuses to adjust his behavior to any social context, shown by how he acts in the manga, so L clearly fits the profile for criteria A3, probably the easiest of any of the criteria. Now, when talking about criteria B, it should be stated that only 2 of the 4 criteria are needed in order to meet the diagnostic requirement. That being said, criteria B for diagnosing autism spectrum disorder reads as follows. Restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities as manifested by at least 2 of the following, currently or by history. Examples are illustrative, not exhaustive. 1. Stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects or speech. Examples including simple motor stereotypes, lining up toys or flipping objects, echolalia, idiosyncratic phrases. Number 2. Insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines, or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior. Examples including extreme distress at small changes, difficulties with transitions, rigid thinking patterns, greeting rituals, or a need to take the same route or eat the same food every day. Number 3, highly restricted, fixated interests that are abnormal in intensity or focus, such as a strong attachment to or preoccupation with unusual objects, excessively circumscribed or interests. I'm not going to try and redo that. That's staying in. Number 4, Hyper or hypo-reactivity to sensory input or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment. Apparent indifference to pain or temperature, adverse response to specific sounds and textures, excessive smelling, touching of objects, or visual fascination with lights or movement. Now, obviously, L doesn't fit the profile for criteria B1 because he doesn't show that much repetitive motor movements, uses of objects, or speech. If anything, that's more near, and even then, it's not so much repetitive as it is just something that he does. The closest we have to this is Al occasionally pressing his thumb to his lips in various spaces, though it's not really repetitive, it just happens. Some people have those kinds of quirks regardless of their neurotypicalness or lack thereof. Typicality? Whatever. Criteria B2, however, is one that L fits. As said before, L is rigid and inflexible in his sitting behavior. Along with this, L is a person with such a large sweet tooth that he's never seen eating anything except coffee and pastries, such as cakes and candies. His body shape seems to support this type of malnutrition that a diet like this would cause, as he's very lanky. L also exhibits a restricted interest in specific cases, as he says that he only takes on difficult cases that interest him personally, such as the Kira case and the Los Angeles baby murder cases in Death Note Another Note, the Los Angeles baby murder cases. He also has a hyperfixation on sweets, as said before. L fits the profile for criteria B3. I'm having a lot of slips of the tongue today. For criteria B4, L barely reacts when light punches him square in the face in Chapter 38, Strike, only saying ouch. Having no further reactions during the minor brawl, minus a couple grunts, which could be attributed to his martial arts knowledge, as quite a few martial arts focus on energy control, and as some may or may not know, letting out that air when you get hit with like a grunt or a shout is actually better because then you don't get the wind knocked out of you and it's easier to recover. While as a detective his job is to point out small details, L will go overboard in order to find things, as he even analyzes people's behaviors out of the context of what he's viewing in order to get a better picture of the possibilities, and he zeroes in on easily missable details, even in sorts of low-resolution security camera footage, like when he notices the envelope missing from Ray Penber in Chapter 15, Phone Call. All of these show that L fits the criteria, fits the bill for criteria B4. Now, since criteria C, D, and E are very short, I'm just going to go through them rapid fire. Criteria C reads, symptoms must be present in the early developmental period, but may not become fully manifest until social demands exceed limited capacities or may be masked by learned strategies in later life. It's difficult to pin this down as the manga takes place after the early developmental period. However, in supplemental material, it has been stated to be canonical that on some level, L has been shown as a child to have a lack of interest in making friends and be more aggressive and violent. Criteria D is symptoms cause clinically significant impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of current functioning. Do I really need to explain this one? Social. Yeah, there's nothing to that one. It's just obvious. And criteria E says these disturbances are not better explained by intellectual disability, intellectual developmental disorder, or global developmental delay. Intellectual disability and autism spectrum disorder frequently co-occur to make comorbid diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder and intellectual disability. Social communication should be below that expected for general developmental level. That last bit is awkwardly worded to me, but whatever. Well, L is extremely intelligent, he is beyond intelligent. So yeah, there's no other better explanation for what he shows. So as you can see, based on what I have shown you from the DSM-5 and from examples from the manga and supplemental material, it wouldn't take a genius to make the assumption that L could potentially have autism. Again, I'm not a licensed medical professional in any way, shape, or form. I'm not qualified to make an official diagnosis. This is purely speculation based on the knowledge of L and the knowledge of autism that we have from official sources of both. That being said, however, I believe it would not be with outside the realm of possibility for L to be diagnosed with autism by someone who is more qualified if he were to exist in the real world and be subject to our real world psychological rules. So that concludes today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe if you like the content, leave a comment saying what you think I should do next, and I will see you all next time.